lot of other unlike a lot of other sports that you can play or games that you can play, golf has a built-in mechanism where you can play against other people. You can compete against other people regardless of your skill level. There's a lot of games that I play. You know, you can play chess, board games, other sports, basketball or whatever, even something like there's softball leagues people play on the weekends and different things like that. And if somebody is a lot better than somebody else, it's very difficult for them to have a match against each other. It's very difficult for them to compete in a way that's fun or meaningful because you just have one person who's just so dominant or so overwhelming that the person who's newer, the person who's not as good, has no possible hope of winning or even really competing. One of the great things about golf, one of the things about golf that I most enjoy is that for golf, that's not true. You can have someone who just started the game a couple weeks ago play against somebody who has been a professional for 30 years because we have this built-in structure of the golf handicap. And what the golf handicap basically does it's a measure of your potential ability. A lot of people think that golf handicap directly relates to strokes over par or under par, or if I'm a 10 handicap, and I'll explain more what some of these terms and phrases mean as we go into it. But people think that, if I'm a 10 handicap, what that means is on a given day, I will likely shoot 10 over par. And that's not really what handicap is. What handicap is it's a measure of your ability. It's a measure of, on any given day, this is how good you can be. This is a measure of your ceiling. And the way they do that is they look at your most recent past rounds. So for a full handicap, as a lot of us term it, it takes your last 20 rounds, and what it does is it picks out your eight best performances, your eight best scores. And using those numbers, using those scores that you've given it over the last 20 rounds, you plug them into a computer, and there's a big long formula that's based on a lot of math and a lot of different grading criteria of different courses based upon the courses you play and different things like that. But based upon these numbers, there's a formula. You punch these numbers. This is what I've shot over my last 20 rounds into the computer, and the computer will spit out a single number. And what that single number is it's a numerical measure of your ability on any given day. This is how good you can possibly be. Now, because it takes 8 of your last 20, another misconception about handicap is that you will shoot your handicap most of the time, and really you won't. Handicap is, as I've said, it's a measure of your potential ability. So most days, you're not going to shoot your handicap. Most days, what you're going to shoot is you're going to shoot a number that's slightly worse than your handicap. Your handicap is what you'll shoot on a good day. And that's why it measures more potential ability than your actual skill relative to par. Now, getting back to what I was saying at the beginning about how you can use the handicap system to play against people can play against each other of different skill levels. The way it does that is your handicap number, whatever that number may be, can be interpreted through whatever course you're playing to get a strokes per hole handicap, as you see on the slide. And what the strokes per hole handicap is it allows people of different abilities with much different numbers. Somebody might have a handicap of 25 or 30. Somebody might have a handicap of 2 or 3. And what this does is this allows you to compare your handicaps together, and you compare it to the course you're going to play. And it gives you a number of strokes per hole that you get that are given to the higher handicap person. So if we play a hole and you are getting a stroke for that hole, and I happen to make a 4, and you happen to make a 5, but you get a stroke for that hole, so you get a 4, we basically tie. And the way you do this is the two players take their handicap number and they compare it to the course handicap. And your handicap number will directly relate to your course handicap. If you look at your scorecards when you play a golf course, every golf course and every set of tees has a set of numbers, usually expressed as a fraction, next to the tees. Usually the first number will be a number that's right around what a number that makes sense for par. It may be between like 67 to 74, 75, and that is referred to as the course rating. It's one component of the handicap formula. The other number is usually a number in the hundredths, and it's the other part of the fraction, and it's usually between 113 and 150. Some of the courses that the pros play will be like 147, 148. A lot of the courses that we play you'll see it'll be 130, 127, 128. And what that number is the slope. And these two numbers are part of the formula that you put your handicap index into, and it spits out a number for this particular course. This is the amount of strokes that you should get. So for example, if you're a 10 handicap, you may be playing a course that is particularly difficult. The course rating may be a couple strokes over par. It may be like a 76. The slope rating may be pretty high. It may be 140, 142, let's say. So your 10 handicap, your handicap index of 10, when you compare it to this course handicap, the course handicap may be higher because the course is more difficult. So on this particular course, you may get 12 or 13 strokes instead of 10. If you're playing a course that's maybe a little easier than average, and you're normally a 10 handicap, today, because the course is a little easier, you may only get 7 or 8 strokes. So what you would do is you would have two people come together. They're going to play a match on a course for today. One person has a certain handicap index. We can say they're a 10. Another person has a certain handicap index. Let's say they're a 20. And let's say this golf course is a little easier than normal. It's a little easier than an average course. Maybe the fairways are a little wider. Maybe the holes are a little shorter. Maybe there's not as much water on the golf course. So the person who has a handicap index of 10, they may get 8 strokes today on this golf course. That is their course handicap. The person who's a 20, they may get 18 strokes on this course today. That's their course handicap. So now if we play a match from the same set of tees against each other, my course handicap, let's say, is an 8. My opponent's course handicap is an 18. That gives us a difference of 10 strokes. What we then do is we then take that difference and we can apply it to the scorecard for this golf course in such a way that we can play a match together, and that match will be on level playing ground, even though one person has a handicap index of a 10 and another person has a handicap index of 20. That normally, if we were to just play a match straight up, only counting strokes, the person who has a handicap index of 10, you would expect that person to win fairly easily pretty much every time. The person who has a 20 handicap would not have a very good time today, tomorrow, or next week, because they would very rarely have a chance of winning. But once we get our course handicaps, comparing our handicap index together, we can then play a match together and have a level playing field. The way that you do this is you take your scorecard, and now that we know that I get 8 strokes for this course and that my opponent is going to get 18, is we look at the scorecard, and when you look at the scorecard, each hole has a number next to it called a handicap for that hole. The holes are ranked 1 to 18. Generally speaking, lower numbers for the handicap will be harder golf holes. So the number one handicapped hole is the hardest hole on the course. The number 18 handicap hole is the easiest hole on the course. And what you do is you start deducting strokes from your score based upon your course handicap, starting with the hardest hole, going all the way until all of your strokes have been used up. So let's say that, as I said, I'm an 8 today. My course handicap is an 8, which means on the scorecard, I'll find the holes that are numbered 1 through 8, and I will get 1 stroke deducted from my score on each of those holes. It's a way of sort of saying that for somebody who's in an 8 handicap on this golf course, these 8 holes are the most difficult holes. So we're going to give you a little bit of a break. We're going to give you an extra stroke to sort of help out your score. And so for those eight holes, I will get a stroke deducted from my score. My opponent, who we said on this particular day in this particular course is an 18, their course handicap is 18, they will get 1 stroke deducted per hole from 1 to 18. So in this case, because their course handicap is an 18, they will get 1 stroke deducted from their score on each hole. And then now that when we play, we'll be able to compare my score with my strokes deducted on the 8 hardest holes with their score, with their strokes deducted on the 18, on all 18 holes in this case, and we can get a score where we're about even. What?
Go on mute. Mute.
Oh, go
on. No, so thank you for going over that. Anne asked a great question, and I think this speaks to why the holes matter. Can you deduct the course handicap from the total score?
So generally speaking, that's not how it's done. You were going to deduct the strokes hole by hole. Why this is there's a few different reasons why this is. It sort of gets into it gets very deep into sort of where golf started and how it began. And really where it began is golf first started not as a stroke play sport, but as a match play sport. It started between matches between people, to the point where your total score over the course of 18 holes mattered a lot less than your individual score hole by hole. And really what the handicap index seeks to do is it seeks to level the playing field among people hole by hole. Because in stroke play, as you know, and we'll get into this later with max score and things like that, when you have stroke play, there's no limit to the amount of strokes that you might get on a hole. You may play a par 4, but you might shoot a 12 or a 13. And taking all of the strokes off on that one particular hole or for your overall score isn't going to help you on the other holes in the match. What the effect of taking the strokes off on your entire score will almost bring it back to a place where you're almost not even your handicap index isn't being compared anymore. The system is sort of designed to work comparing hole by hole scores as you go through a match.
Thank you. Before we go any further, I know there was a question that just came in regarding if your handicap is higher than 18, and yes, that does happen. Mine is personally a 31.4. You will get multiple strokes per hole, and it will be applied the same way. So if you have, let's say, a handicap of 20, those 2 leftover strokes are applied to the 2 hardest holes, and it continues on that way. Before we move on, any other questions for Jeff on what is a handicap index and how is it applied to the course before we discuss GHIN and some other notes? Awesome. I guess I will move on forward. You ready for the next slide? Awesome.
So a lot of times when you hear handicap discussed, people will refer to their GHIN, or they'll refer to GHIN in general. And what GHIN basically is it's the Golf Handicap and Information Network. It's basically the service that the USGA, which is in America, the USGA is the ultimate governing body for all things golf. GHIN is the service that they created to manage and categorize and provide handicap services to all of us golfers here playing under the USGA in America. GHIN is a system. You sign up and you get a unique ID, a GHIN number or a GHIN ID. And using this, you are now part of a national / global database of all golfers that have and keep a GHIN number or have and keep a handicap index. And what you're able to do with this global network is you're able to look up your GHIN number or your handicap number. You're able to look up others and their handicap number, and also see all of the data that goes into basically calculating this handicap. When you look up someone's handicap number, you can see all of their their previous 20 scores, all of the numbers that go into calculating their handicap. You can see those rounds that they played, the ones that they logged. You can see the course ratings and the slope that they played on. So it's all very open. It's all very transparent. If generally speaking, if people are logging their numbers properly and if they're logging their rounds the right way, it's a completely transparent way for you to go on and to see someone else's handicap index. LPGA members, you can renew your GHIN through the association. So the association will manage that for you. It is an annual fee. It's $35. That is true for everybody. We all pay the fee. For instance, I'm not a member of the Amateurs Association, so I have to renew my GHIN outside of that, but it is also $35 for me. Once you've signed up for your GHIN and you paid your fee and you've gotten your GHIN ID number, you can now log and post your scores. After every time you play around, you go and you post your score, and your handicap will be continuously updated, taking your 8 best of your last 20 rounds. A very easy and convenient way of doing this is GHIN has a mobile app that you can download right onto your phone. And after you get off the course, when you're in the clubhouse, when you're getting your drink at the 19th hole or later that night, or whenever you have a chance to add up your score and add up your scorecard, you can log into your GHIN app, you can post your score. And it used to be that your handicap would only be updated every 2 weeks. They had what they called revision cycles, and the revision cycles used to be on the 1st and the 15th of every month. So if you played, if right after the beginning of the month, you played a bunch of rounds and you shot really good numbers and you were excited and you wanted to see what your new handicap was going to be, you used to have to wait until the 15th of the month to get the number. Now, with the advent of sort of more computer technology, and they've been improving the system and building the system, now your handicap is updated daily. If you shoot good numbers and you shoot a round that's really good and you think your handicap's going to go down, you actually have the opportunity to see that happen in real, the very next day you get your updated GHIN number. We encourage you to sign up for a handicap, to sign up to become part of the GHIN network, and to post your scores and establish your handicap and keep it as consistently and accurately as you can. Not only because this will allow you to have access to competitions or allow you to play those matches, like we were saying earlier, among people, and have a level playing field to play your matches, but also for yourself. Handicap is an excellent way to track your own progress, to track your own improvement as a golfer, to see how you're coming along. A lot of the GHIN data that's kept that you can access through the app or by going online will show you your trends. It will show you what your handicap was last year. It will show you the graph throughout the year. And it really gives you this great benchmark and this great, amazing amount of information to be able to really show how, if am I improving? Am I getting better? Is my handicap going down? So signing up for and keeping a handicap is something that we encourage all golfers to do.
Thank you. And that's actually probably a great plug for the LPGA Amateur Association has a national competition called The Biggest Loser. And what that is each year you can sign up, and there is a whole nother set of math that they do to determine who has been the most improved across various flights. So definitely keep an eye out for that if this is something interesting. But to Jeff's point, it is a great benchmark for yourself. It is a great benchmark for casual rounds. I know us personally, we'll head out and we'll, depending on what our handicaps are that month or whatever, we'll agree, hey, how many strokes are you getting a hole? And hey, where are the extra ones? And to even more seriously, when you compete at the national level, them taking, there's a handicap revision date by, that's the handicap you're going to play with, and that's what you compete with. So it's an awesome system. Jeff, we do have a couple of questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
The first being, if you play a course often, your score will hopefully improve. Does this give you an unrealistically low handicap? Is there any way to address this other than playing varied courses?
So this is a super interesting question, because it is a question that you run into a lot of times. And the answer is, in a way, yes. The handicap, like anything else, is you have to sort of understand what it is that you're measuring. If you play the same golf course over and over and over again, you will likely become very good at that golf course. You all will also likely become better at golf, because you still have to hit the shots, you still have to make the putts, you still have to overcome the challenges that golf course is presenting you. But because you're playing the same golf course over and over again, you're likely to become familiar with a lot of those challenges and understand how to overcome them easier. So your scores should get better, and so your handicap will go down. And you may find that you go to a different golf course with different holes and different challenges that you're not ready for, and all of a sudden you shoot worse. It is always a good idea as a golfer, if you're interested in improving and getting better at golf and not just a specific golf course, to play varied golf courses as much as possible. This is actually, what makes this question so interesting is it sort of applies a little more broadly than just specifically with handicap. There are a lot of golfers that play the same course over and over again, and they think of themselves as a certain caliber of golfer. They may think, oh, I'm really good. I go out and I shoot, 2 or 3 over par every single time, and I'm a good player. And then you take them to another golf course that they haven't seen before, and all of a sudden they're not the same golfer anymore. They're not 2 or 3 over par. They may be 8 or 9 over par. They're not playing the same way. And this has less to do with handicap and more to do with the fact that as they've been learning golf, as they've been trying to get better, they just haven't been challenging themselves enough. They've been playing the same golf course over and over again. They've gotten very comfortable. They've gotten very accustomed to it. And so when it comes time to play a different golf course, they find that their skill level or their anticipated skill level doesn't translate quite the same way. So yes, to answer the question, somebody who only plays the same golf course over and over again, although the math will be the same because that golf course does have its own course rating, it does have its own slope rating, and it is and that will dictate your handicap. As you get better at playing that course alone, your handicap may go down a little more artificially than if you're actually getting better at golf. Um, Among competitive golfers, we always have a phrase that we like to say: you always want to have a golf game that can travel. And what that basically means is golf is a sport where a lot of golfers have a home course, and that there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But if you only ever play that home course, you're likely to not have a game that travels. And if you're ever in a situation where you want to play a tournament or you get invited to go play with a friend who has a different home course or something like that, it's likely that you won't be as good. You will not play to your handicap as much on that other course because really your game has been built for one specific course rather than the challenges that golf can present at a wide variety of courses.
Thank you. And I think to further that point, right, the handicap is a tool. Like we don't have to be afraid to go to something a little less familiar because of the course handicap concept. We get to continue to make progress even if the course is harder. So Stephanie, I saw your question on if the GHIN, if you can port other apps over. So I'm not sure if there's like an automated way to integrate it or anything, but you can just put in on the GHIN app a quick 18 hole score. So you don't have to track it hole by hole. The next interesting question from Judy, thank you, is when competing prior to a significant tournament, should you attempt to make your handicap higher or is this unethical? AKA,
Go ahead.
I was going to say AKA sandbagging.
Sandbagging, yes. Sandbagging is a 4-letter word in golf. So what sandbagging basically is it is inflating your handicap to be higher than what it is supposed to be, either by inputting scores that are just flat out not true, that are worse than what you actually shot, or not posting some of your better rounds so that it's your worst rounds that are being calculated for the handicap. What this will do is it will give you a handicap that is higher than it should be. And you might say, well, why would I ever want to do that? Why would I ever want to look like I'm a worse player than I really am? And the answer is very simple. There are people who will purposefully inflate their handicap so that when they go play a tournament that uses handicap strokes, or when they play a match that uses handicap strokes, they get more strokes than they're supposed to. It is a form of cheating. Ideally, you don't want to do that. A lot of golf does run on the honor system, where we're all out there trying to trust and believe that the person across the fairway from us isn't fluffing up their lie to get a better shot, or they're not forgetting a stroke that they took in the trees that nobody else saw. Handicap is another one of those systems. There really isn't any way for other golfers to police your scores that you put into the GHIN. It's very easy, frankly, for you to inflate your handicap to a handicap that you're not supposed to have. And then when you go play in a tournament or you go play a match, you get a lot of strokes that you're not supposed to get. And then what those people will do, those sandbaggers, is they'll suddenly shoot the best round of their life. I can't believe I've never played this well. And suddenly I'm shooting 63 and I can't believe it. And all the other golfers in the field, all the other golfers in the tournament will kind of look at them with the side eye, and they'll start, chattering amongst themselves, and you'll hear whispers of sandbagging and sandbagger go around. And it's extremely frowned upon. It is a form of cheating. You're not supposed to do that. You are supposed to input every round you shoot with the proper score to get an accurate handicap. And so, yes, I would say that it's definitely unethical, and you don't want to be a sandbagger. You don't want to be known as a sandbagger. You don't want to be that. Sandbaggers, they sit in the corner by themselves. No one likes to play with them. You get a reputation, and it's not a good thing. You definitely don't want to do that. So yes, make sure that you're putting in all of your scores. Make sure that you're putting in the correct score, that you're keeping it the right way, and that if you're going to go win a golf tournament that has handicap strokes, that you want to make sure, and I know I sound like a Saturday afternoon special saying this, but you want to make sure that when you win the tournament, you got the right number of strokes, that you at least feel like you won that tournament based on your skill and merit, not because you manipulated the math of the situation.
Thank you. And I will also mention, there is the opposite of the vanity handicap, which is lower than your usual, just to feel good about it. So as Jeff was saying, the expectation is that every round you play, and there's nuance, right? Like if you're going to play a practice round and you know you're not playing by the rules, yada, yada, no, that's not something to enter into GHIN. But if you're going out intending to score and you are going out playing a round, the expectation is that that round be entered into your GHIN app. And as Jeff mentioned, a lot of this is calculated via the app. So all of the complicated math that's behind this is not really necessary, is not necessary to be super familiar with. Just an understanding of, what are you measuring? I think our next page goes into rule 3.1. Our next, excuse me. Oh, how do I get a handicap? Never mind, I'm jumping ahead. So our next page is how do I get a handicap? Over to you, Jeff.
So now that you've signed up, you've paid your $35 fee, and you're ready to get your measure of your golfing potential, your potential ability. You want to start playing matches or qualifying for tournaments. You want to get your handicap. What do? Well, it's very simple. You start playing golf. In order to get a handicap, the system, all that complicated math that we keep referring to, has to have something to go off of. And so what you need to do is you have to play at least 3 18-hole rounds in order to get your first handicap. Now, obviously, playing only 3 rounds is going to give you a very small sample size of what you can do. As I mentioned earlier, a full handicap is based on your best 8 of your last 20. So you won't have a full picture. You won't have a full picture of your handicap until you get to closer to those 20 rounds. But minimum to get your first handicap number, you have to play at least 3 18-hole rounds. This can be split up. You can do this you can play 3 18-hole rounds, you can play 6 9-hole rounds, you can play an 18-hole round and 4 9-hole rounds. Some combination of 54 holes have to be played in order for you to get your first handicap. As soon as you've entered in your third 18-hole round, you'll get your handicap the very next day. And what's very important to note, because there are a lot of different formats of playing golf. Obviously, we all know about stroke play, where you play your ball from the first tee to the 18th hole, and you're only hitting your ball and you're only keeping your score. Match play is similar, where you're only playing your ball. There are other formats where you may not play your own ball the entire time. There's scrambles where everyone hits a shot and then you get to pick the best shot. So it may not be yours, it may be somebody else's, and you all go and you hit from that spot, so on and so forth. When you play a round of golf where you're not playing your own ball for the entire time, you are not supposed to post those scores. Because obviously, if I'm playing a scramble and I'm on the tee box and I hook my drive into the woods, and the next person gets up and hits a drive right down the middle, and I get to hit my second shot from the middle of the fairway, that's not a true reflection of how I would have played that hole if I were forced to play my own ball from the woods off the tee. So you're only supposed to post the scores that reflect your ability. And that means playing your own ball as much as you possibly can the entire time. If you're playing a format where, let's say it's a best ball, and you don't count your score for that hole, you didn't finish, you picked your ball up, your partner, was tapping in for par, and you were still off the green hitting for double bogey, so you just picked your ball up and put it in your pocket, and your partner tapped in, and the team score was your partner's score, and you didn't finish the hole. That, again, you're not supposed to post that, because that's not a true reflection of how you would have played that hole or you would have played that round. There are times when you're playing, if you're playing your own ball, could you just go back for a second? There are times where if you're playing, you would not have gotten the opportunity, you don't get the opportunity to finish. This time of year, a lot of times we run out, sunsets early, and you don't get in a full 18 holes. The GHIN system actually takes that into account. In order to post a score, you have to play your own ball. If it's a 9-hole round, you have to play at least 7 holes. So if you go out to play and you play 5 holes and you're standing on the 6th tee, and all of a sudden it starts to downpour and you have to run off the golf course, and you don't get to 7 holes completed, you do not post those first 5 holes. Those first 5 holes just sort of disappear. If, let's say, you get to hole 11 or hole 12 and you're playing, and all of a sudden you get a call on your phone and there's a work emergency or something, and you got to run off the golf course, and you didn't get to 14 holes out of the 18, you can't post that 18-hole score. Now, what you can do, as long as you've played 7, is you can post your 9-hole score. So you didn't get to 14 holes to post your full 18, but you can still post your 9-hole score. But any time that you play your own ball for 7 holes, you are expected to at least post a 9-hole score. And any time that you play your own ball for 14 holes, you are expected to post your 18-hole score. And for those holes that you didn't get to finish, so if you play 7 holes, how do you post a 9-hole score? If I didn't finish holes 8 or hole 9, there is a system in place for you to basically fill in scores for yourself that will allow you to post that full number anyway. That system is something that we'll get to later on. So this is rules sort of surrounding the handicap system. Some of these we've already touched on, and some of them also address Judy's question earlier about sandbagging. Surrounding handicap, there are a few rules that we all play, and as I said earlier, golf is played largely by the honor system. There's a big old rule book with lots of rules, and when you play in competition or when you play in matches against other people, whether you're using handicap or not, you are expected to follow these rules. And following these rules, what it will do is it will help you make your handicap as accurate as possible. And that ultimately benefits you because it gives you the best benchmark measure for how good at golf I am or I'm getting as my handicap gets better. Some of the things that you're supposed to do is you're supposed to play by the rules of golf. This means that if you're posting your handicap for this round, you don't do things. You finish out the hole. You make sure all of your putts go in the hole. You don't pick up and just, I'll just write down a 5. Or if I hit a ball that's behind a tree, I have to chip out from behind that tree. I have to count that stroke. I chipped out. That's part of my score for the day. And you have to play by the rules of handicapping. This speaks to both getting the most accurate score, but also to some of those questions, the question earlier about sandbagging. There are situations where to post your handicap number, you are allowed to enter in a score that's actually a little lower than the score you may have actually gotten on the hole. This again all goes to trying to make your handicap as accurate of a measure of your potential ability as possible. It's interesting here, the bullet on the screen that says attempt to make the best score possible. That is, again, something only you can know if you're doing or not. If you're standing over that 3-foot putt and you have that big tournament coming up in the back of your head and you go, hey, if I miss this putt, or if I 3-putt from here, it'll make my handicap a little bigger. It'll make me a little better in that tournament. Truthfully, none of us can really know if you're doing that. But ultimately, we want to try to play with integrity. We want to try to follow the rules of golf and the rules of handicapping. And we want to post all our scores. And we always want to be trying to shoot the lowest number possible. Because again, in the end, it really just goes to benefit you, to give you the best measure and an ability of give you the best measure and indicator of your ability. So elaborating a little bit on elaborating, oh, now I'm getting distracted. I missed the tiger putt. Elaborating a little bit on what I just mentioned about the maximum hole score. And one of the most common misconceptions of handicap is handicap is meant to be a measure of your potential score, of your potential ability. It's meant to be a measure of the number that you would shoot on a good day. And so because of this, there are maximum hole score rules that go into a handicap. Because if you are, let's say you have a really low handicap number. Let's say that you're a 5 handicap, which anything in the single digits is considered to be pretty good. And let's say on a particular hole, you just have a bad hole for whatever happens. Your swing's off a little bit, you're a little distracted, it's a very difficult hole, and you normally play very well, you normally strike the ball very well, you make a lot of pars and bogeys, but on this hole, something happens, you get stuck in a tree, you make a lot of penalties, and you shoot an 11. You make an 11 on the hole. It happens to everybody. It happens to people with double-digit handicaps. It happens to the pros. Sometimes you'll see the pros will make a 10 or 11 on the hole. When you go to input your handicap, you do not want to put an 11 for that hole. Now, why is that? I just got done telling you that you're supposed to play by the rules and have integrity and post the number that you hit. Why wouldn't I post the number that I made? And here's why. Handicap is a measure of your potential ability, your potential best score on a given day. A player with a 5 handicap does not make an 11 very frequently. In fact, I would dare to say that on that hole, that hypothetical hole where they made an 11, if you immediately let them play it 10 times more right then and there, they wouldn't make another 11 again. They would all of a sudden, you'd see they'd make a bunch of pars, they'd make a bogey, maybe there'd be a double bogey in there, but there wouldn't be another 11. It's very rare for certain handicaps to make numbers that big. So when I go and put my score in, if I put that 11 in a way, it's almost a little misleading because I'm very unlikely to shoot that number again anytime in the future or anytime nearly in the future. My score will be slightly artificially inflated. The next time I play that golf course, I'm not likely to make an 11. So if we're playing a match and the last time you made an 11, that's what you inputted for your score, your handicap is not going to be accurate of your potential. You may say it's accurate to what I actually did. I made an 11, so that was my score, but handicap is supposed to measure your potential. And so if you make a big number like that, there is a method that you're supposed to use to knock that score down to a more reasonable measure of what you're likely to get on that hole more times than not. Overall, on average, I'm not going to make a lot of 11s. I may make a number closer to par. And the way that you do that in the current handicap system is you take your maximum score for the hole. So regardless of what you shot, which I'll remind you still counts for the match, it still counts for your round. You still want to put down that 11 if you're playing a match. But as far as your handicap is concerned, when you go to put your handicap in, you are going to adjust the score for that hole. And the way you're going to do that, the maximum score rule, is it's double bogey plus your handicap strokes. So, for instance, if I'm a 5 handicap, I get 1 stroke on each of the 5 hardest holes. Let's say I'm playing the number 1 hardest hole on the scorecard. When it comes time, and when I do that, I make it 11. I put 11 down on the scorecard. That's my score for my round. That's my score for the match. But then later on, when I go to enter in my score for handicap purposes, I don't enter in an 11 on that score. What I do is I look at my handicap and I say, okay, my max score is double bogey plus 2, or I'm sorry, it's double bogey plus handicap strokes received. Or another way of saying that is par, whatever par is, plus 2. That's how you get to double bogey, plus handicap strokes received. So if I'm a 5 handicap and I play the number 1 handicap hole and I make an 11, when I go to enter in my score for the purposes of handicap, what I'm actually going to enter in is I'm actually going, let's say, for instance, the number 1 handicap hole is a par 4. It's a very difficult par 4. It's the hardest hole on the golf course. What I'm actually going to enter in is I'm going to enter in 7. I get to wave a magic handicap wand and immediately erase 4 strokes off that score, only for the purposes of entering in my handicap.
And I'll mention, sorry, real quick, the the app will do this for you as well. So if you enter hole by hole for that course, if you put in that 11, it will say, oh, that's 11, but it will also give you the adjusted hole score based on this math.
Yeah, so a lot of this is us sort of explaining and giving you insight of the background, a lot of this. But one of the great things about the technology is that a lot of it will do this for you. So you don't have to worry about it. When you go to input your handicap and your handicap score, you can just put in the number that was written down on the scorecard and it will adjust it for you. But just so you're aware, you will not get credit for that 11. It will adjust it down to your max hole score, which in the case of my example would be a 7, would be 4 strokes for par, plus 2 strokes for the double bogey. That's how you get to the double bogey. So that would be 6. Plus, if I'm a 5 handicap playing the hardest hole on the golf course, I get 1 handicap stroke. I add that to my score. My max score for that hole is a 7.
Cool. Sorry, just looking at a quick question. So we got a question in Moonlight on not all courses have hole by hole input, just front 9 and back 9. Is there an example to calculate your net score to input there? That might also be one we have to kind of take away and talk to Irene about.
So the question again
is not all courses have hole by hole input, just front 9 and back 9 on the GHIN app. Can you walk through an example of how to calculate your net score to input? That might end up being the next page, right, with the scorecard.
So we're gonna look at a little at specific examples of this. In the case of if you aren't able to go through your hole by hole input and have the app do it for you, this is an example. That's a great example of why some of this information may be useful, because you then, the responsibility then falls on you, the golfer, to then adjust your 9-hole score as appropriate to enter that in. So if, let's say, in my hypothetical example of a 5 handicap getting an 11, and I have to, and I have to adjust it down to a 7, if the app is not going to give me that ability, when I look at my, let's say that hole was on the front 9. When I look at my 9-hole score, I then have to know that I have to knock 4 strokes off of that score when I input my front 9 score, because otherwise I'm not following the max handicap rule. So what you see in front of you is it's another example of sort of what I was just explaining. In this example, a player with a course handicap of 10 gets 1 stroke on all of the holes from that are marked on the scorecard from 1 to 10. So whenever you look at your golf scorecard, you'll see, as it is here, the hole number, the yardage of the hole, the par of the hole, and then there'll also be a 4th number, which will either be called the stroke index or the handicap or the handicap number. And these will be all of the holes rated from 1 to 18. Generally, the handicap numbers are all odd on the front 9 and all even on the back 9. So on the front 9, you'll see the numbers 1, 3, 5, 7, all the way up to 17. And on the back 9, the hardest hole on the back 9 will start at 2. And then the second hardest hole will be 4. The third hardest hole will be 6, et cetera, until you get to what the easiest hole on the back 9 is, which will be ranked 18. If this golfer has a course handicap of 10, they get a stroke on the handicap holes 1 through 10. Now, let's say on the back 9, they get to hole 12 here, 360-yard par 4, which is the 6th handicap hole on the golf course. So as a 10 handicap, with a player with a course handicap of 10, they are going to get 1 stroke on this hole. Now, again, let's say they have a rough hole and they make a quadruple bogey 8. For the purposes of the handicap, they would not put in the 8. They would have a max score of 7. And the way that you would calculate that is you start with par, which in this case is 4. You add 2 strokes because the rule is net double bogey. So double bogey is 2 plus par. So that gives you 6 strokes, 4 strokes for par, 2 strokes additional for the double bogey, and then plus an additional stroke because on this hole, being the 6th handicap hole on the course, they get an extra stroke. So you'd have to add that. You'd add that to the score rule. So you would get a par 4 plus 2 strokes for double bogey plus 1 stroke for the handicap would give you a max possible score on this hole of 7. So even though you got an 8 on the hole, that would be your score for the round. If you were playing in a tournament, your card would say 8. That's the number you would get. When you go to enter in your handicap, that number would be reduced by 1 to 7. And you would only have to show that you shot a 7 on that hole. Because again, going back to the original idea of this, if you had a course handicap of 10 playing this whole course, and we let you play this course, let's say another 10 times, you would be very unlikely to get an 8 on this hole another time. So if we let you put 8 in for your score, it would artificially inflate your handicap, because that is not really a good measure of what your potential is. Starting the day, when we start the day on this golf course, we're very unlikely to make an 8 on hole number 12. Just the way that the handicap and the strokes work out, your potential is very frequently to score better than 8. So to when if you score the 8 today, it's a bad day. You had a bad hold today. That's not a good measure of your potential going forward. So we adjust the score down by net double bogey +1 in this case, because you're getting 1 stroke. And for handicap purposes, you would enter in a 7.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that. Before we move on to competition, are there any other questions on handicap or GHIN? Awesome. Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through this. It helps to have someone who has experience and who has, I will tell everybody, he immediately pointed out the sandbagger when we were at National, and we played with some of her peers and had even, some of those inputs. So I appreciate all of the experience behind the explanation. The next section that we want to dive into is competition. And so for today, there's just a couple of things that we'll review. The reason they're together, as we've touched on, is handicaps enable players to engage in competition, whether it be casually among friends. Like I said, Jeff and our friends will play skins every time we go out to play together, or at the national level in LPGA amateur competitions. So today we'll review the prerequisites required for competing. We'll discuss opportunities to compete with the LPGA amateurs. And after this, I'm happy to talk offline. I'm one of our members who has had an opportunity to compete in one of the national events. And then we will also talk about our Coastal New Jersey's upcoming and only partially defined 2023 competitive league. So jumping right into it, there's 3 things that you need to compete. And obviously this is a little tongue in cheek, but the LPGA amateur national events are well coordinated, and as a new player and new competitor are pretty guided. But there's a couple of things you do need to go in with. One, your handicap. All of the LPGA national events are flighted, which means that there is an opportunity to play scratch if you are, I believe the handicap is under 12, or play with your handicap in flight. So personally, I was in our 3rd flight this year, which with a handicap of around 30. The second part is knowledge of the rules, not just for yourself to know what your score is and to track it, but to also mark other people's scores when you're competing. Now, you're not expected to count their strokes, but there is a level of protecting the field that is expected when you're marking someone's score. So if they tell you, oh yeah, I birdied that hole, but it took them 2 to get on and you saw them 3 putt, it's your responsibility as a fellow competitor to say, hey, that's not the right score to put down. And the last one is a good mental game. You not only have to handle your ability to deal with the ups and downs and challenges of the golf game as you're playing, but also handle other people's. The second hole on our last day of competing this year, I had, after hitting 1 shot, I was in a little rough spot. Everybody else had hit about, 3 or 4 to get to where I was. And as we were talking, decided, the second hole was the time to tell me that we were going to be put on the clock and I better hurry up. Now, clearly, we weren't going to be put on the clock. Clearly, someone was having some challenges with their own game and wanted to make some noise. But for us to continue playing our game well and the way we wanted, some of it requires tuning that out and being able to hold steady and play shot by shot. So the actual competitions that LPGA amateurs puts together at a national level are on screen. They are designed to be inclusive for all skill levels. So last year was my first year playing on course and playing with a handicap, and we were able to compete. It was a great experience. You are flighted, so you're with players who are at your skill level, and it is just a completely different experience. Generally, I found it to be very positive. So I have noted down, right, for whether you're a beginner, a new competitor, maybe you don't want to travel, or maybe you don't want to be on a team, there's options. We do have the virtual scramble, so you can put together a team of 4 and input your score for national. If you're new to formats, if you're looking for something competitive but a little more casual, this is a great option. You'll note that most of the scrambles follow the Ambrose handicap. So what that means is that the handicap of all players is combined and then divided by 6 for a team handicap. And that is for cases that Jeff mentioned, right, where you're not playing your own ball the whole time, but you do want to account for the varying levels of skill among the players on the team. There is another scramble open. The registration for this one actually just opened. This one specifically, I believe, is in California. It's at Indian Wells. If you're interested, definitely reach out. We are looking to put a team together. The other one here that's an individual, the only one here that's an individual is the Championship Open. That is flighted stroke play. That is travel. This year, they are not doing any qualifiers. It is just one event in the end of July. And then the other two team formats that rely a little more heavily on individual play because they involve stroke play and they are best balls are the team championship. So that's going to be, I don't remember the date offhand, but if you go to the site, and actually it's on the next page, we'll go through them, or we'll flash them on screen. But the team championship is teams of 2, and that is also 2 formats, so it's 4-ball. And what 4-ball means, and I know this is slightly confusing, but 4-ball is 2 teams of 2 people, and the winner of the hole is decided by the best ball from each person. So if you are on the team that has the best ball, your team wins that hole. That one's a great option for new competitors. You can find someone who maybe hasn't played, or maybe they haven't either, and you get to kind of do it. You do it as a team and you work through it together while still having, that 2-ball scramble is still the same concept. You have someone to kind of lean on. The last big one at National is the Cup Series. This one does involve qualifiers, and we are likely going to attend the qualifier that is in Maryland. We are hoping to put together at least two teams for the Cup Series. They are teams of 8. Given the size of these teams and that these are national events, the Cup Series tends to fill up pretty quickly. So if this is something you're interested in, please reach out as soon as possible. We're looking to build teams and leverage Jeff for some help as we prep for succeeding at, competing at the qualifier and then hopefully making it to the main cup. Beyond that, more casually, there are also our outings that we have at least once a month. A number of those they're varying competitive formats. And so that is also another way to get involved and enjoy competing with your fellow members at the chapter level and then inter-chapter level. So I will pause there. Any questions on the types of competitive opportunities the national organization provides? Cool. So I'll quickly flash this up. This is available online. I know personally I will be attending or trying to attend the team championship at Slammer and Squire, since that is where the Golf Hall of Fame is. And I think they're closing soon, so we're going to try to go take a look before they close. As you can see, the regional cup qualifiers is really I'll say it's the big thing. The mid-Atlantic September 15th to 16th date is the closest one to us and is the one that we are aiming to go for. If anybody has watched the Solheim Cup, this is the LPGA amateurs version of that. So there are a couple of days of, so there's match play, as well as other team formats. And then the final for that will be in October in Alabama. So again, I will pause here. Any questions on where to find this or what, what some of this information has? Cool. Feel free to reach out if you have a chance to take a look at it after. Once you're on the site, there are definitely, when you go to the site, it gives information on, also some fun pictures, but it will give you information on more of what to expect. And that includes cost, what comes with it. Happy to discuss further. Of course, I chose the one that doesn't have any of that, so I'm sorry about that. But again, feel free to use our site. It has great resources and it will give you further information. If there is something you're interested in, please feel free to reach out. We are looking to coordinate teams and help our membership come together to attend these events. Our last thing to go over is our 2023 competitive league. So this year we are looking to offer, I haven't quite found the word for it, whether it be a shadow league or a pop-up league, but the idea is that you will, once you sign up for the league, you will have the opportunity to post a score from the golf course of that week. We will typically be doing the Monmouth County parks or other public courses so that there is less of a hurdle to get in. And ideally, we are going to be setting up initial, like similar to pop-up golf, time slots within the week that our members can attend. But the idea is that you can go anytime during the week and submit your score, and we will recognize the highest gross and low net and low gross winners each week. As I mentioned, we're still working on building this out, but I think the idea is that you can use this as an overlay to the our league that's in the parks on Tuesday. So if you're there already, you can use that and have somebody mark your score, or you can go separately. But again, the opportunity is there to build a competitive spirit, and the best way to practice for competition is to compete. I think that is all we really had to go over today. Jeff, thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through stuff. Everybody who's taken the time to engage and ask questions, Judy, Stephanie, Virginia, greatly appreciated. I will take a moment very quickly. As people are dropping off, any last questions or anything else of interest, curiosities? Awesome. If that's it, then thank you very much, everybody. Please feel free to reach out if you have any further questions. And thank you again for your engagement. We're looking forward to talking again soon and continuing our topic of discussion. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thanks, Julie.
All right. Thanks, Eva.